Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma. Welcome to this special edition where I'm flying solo without some of my usual help here, and that's just because I wanted to throw in a really quick post-game episode following the Pittsburgh Steelers loss, in air quotes here, 17-14 at home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Win is a loss, a win in preseason, or win is a win. Try saying that again, and it rhymes. When the Steelers win a preseason game, you're going to have winners and losers across this this exercise. We're out of training camp now. You had the joint practices, and your main evaluation is now like just 3 preseason games, and especially the Steelers are looking at some of these battles at the bottom portion of what will be the 53-man roster. Brian and I are probably going to look at this later this week ahead of the game in Carolina on Thursday as a preview for that game, who's on the hot seat. But there are some definite winners and losers that I wanted to point out ahead of that. Just as an introduction to this episode, we were a little caught off guard too that the Steelers didn't trot out like Aaron Rodgers or DK Metcalf or anybody like of significance, like your main big time star players that were acquired or have been playing on this team, like TJ Watt, big time player who just landed a big bag of cash, right? But it does give us an opportunity to see some of the younger players. It wasn't the most exciting game. It was actually quite bland throughout, and I mean, I wouldn't blame most of the if you didn't even pay attention in the second half. Who are some of these people is what you're probably thinking. But no DK Metcalf, no Jalen Ramsey, no Patrick Queen, no Aaron Rodgers, didn't even have Ben Skoranek, Will Howard, who we want to see out of Ohio State, the rookie, still nursing a hand injury. Calvin Austin in that battle for wide receiver 2. Don't get to see him either. He's a bit dinged up. Darius Slay, veteran, didn't play. Joey Porter didn't play. Deshaun Elliott, Corey Trice did not play. Jalen Warren, Dante Kent, who desperately needs to get on the field, one of the late round draft picks, somebody else I'm going to talk about later in the show as far as the winners and losers. Alex Highsmith, Ryan McCullum, Calvin Anderson, let's see, notables, Isaac Seumalo, John New Smith, Pat Freiermuth, TJ Watt, and of course Cam Hayward. Yeah, that's a big number of players that did not get out there on the field, and there was opportunities for some other players as part of that. So I would like to, without further ado, I'm going to keep this one a little short because, again, it's post-game for preseason. Let's talk about the offensive winners. And unfortunately, don't even have a graphic. I don't even know how this is possible. Probably the biggest winner of the evening, who everyone's talking about, targeted 4 times, 2 catches, 72 yards with a 42-yard long, and then 30 plus on the other crosser, was Roman Wilson. Finally, we sound vindicated for as dumb as we've sound over the last few weeks. And I apologize, technical whatever. Windows 11 here, my operating system cranked up my mic volume to 100%. So I apologize if I was spiking and screaming into people's ears. Brian had crickets in his office that he finally got rid of with the ultrasonic whatever. It's just been absolute madness. And then there's madness here. Roman Wilson, we've been talking about this guy. He didn't get to play last year. He didn't even get to play in the preseason last year. So you didn't get to see the speed. You didn't get to see the physicality. He's going to be a hell of a player. It's going to make everyone forget about all of this stupid. In fact, it already has. All the stupid media talk about trade for this guy or that guy that might be available as a wide receiver 2. The guy from the 49ers. I forgot who it was. Juwan Jennings, I think. Who cares? Terry McLaurin, who's now 30 years old. Great wide receiver, but not somebody that the Steelers need to be paying an additional $30 million a year. When you got Roman Wilson, I think Calvin Austin will still be a great option. And another winner in this group, believe it or not, Brandon Johnson. He's 6'2". He's got some size that some of the other Steelers receivers don't have. And it's really starting to make me, wonder where his role might be. I was thinking more or less practice squad, but now the more and more that I'm thinking about it, and of course, Brandon Johnson with the 1 touchdown catch, 3 catches, 16 yards, and you see him celebrating here with some of the other Steelers offense. I think he might have a spot on this roster. And I'll talk about that. Maybe, do I have, let me see who I have in the losers. I did put Robert Woods in the losers because I really don't know where Robert Woods ends up. And this is going to be part of Brian and I's talk about the 53-man roster and who's going to make it. So I don't want to get too in depth, but just keep an eye on Brandon Johnson, because he's a bigger guy. He's going to be maybe a red zone target. He also made a tackle on special teams. He's doing some stuff. He's doing some really good stuff that's going to get him into the conversation. Whereas Robert Woods is already a veteran. He's kind of there, but yeah, he's just kind of there. Does he just get passed by maybe a few of the younger players? Don't forget Ben Skowronek, who did not play in this game. Scotty Miller, who did. He's still making a case for a spot on this roster. Rock Taylor. I think Rock Taylor, the needle went up a little bit for Taylor in this game. It would have been even more maybe if he had caught the touchdown pass just a little bit outside of his fingertips. The quarterbacking leaves a little to be desired. That'll be discussed a little bit later as well. And then, of course, Caleb Johnson. Finally, this is what they wanted to see. And some people thought that maybe it didn't bode well for Johnson that he had played so much. He had 11 carries in this game. This is what he needed. He needs a confidence boost. He had 50 yards, a 4.5 average per carry, 14 yards on the one big long play. You're finally seeing the things that a lot of us have been talking about when we saw him in training camp. And he also had a catch for 9 yards as well in this one. So Caleb Johnson, also needle stock rising. Broderick Jones looks a little more comfortable in the left tackle position. There's not a whole lot to maybe evaluate with Broderick Jones in this game as much as, you might want to evaluate usually, but with offensive linemen, and that's kind of the case. Jones played 10 snaps, looked comfortable. That offensive line, I thought, was doing pretty solid. I would like to see a little more, but I don't know that we're going to get more. They had the joint practices, and they had decided, well, we saw enough of Aaron Rodgers. We saw enough of, all of the other veteran players. Why risk and put them out there for injury? And that's, the injury bug. Jalen McMillan, Tampa Bay, gets just upended. Was that one Thornhill or was that Chuck Clark? But he gets upended on that one play. Oh, it's Daryl Porter. Maybe I should put Daryl Porter in my list of defensive players, but I didn't get the defensive players yet, but I'll tell you who's all there. I might have to throw them in there. I've got a lot of winners and losers, stock rising and whatnot with these players, but Broderick Jones helping lead the way with the run game, helping block. He looked more comfortable. It was only 10 snaps, I know, but he's supposed to be natural as a left tackle. Let's get to our defensive winners before we get to some of the losers here. And of course, mentioning a few of these players already, Derek Harmon is the one guy that really stands out in this game, right? Because he gets the sack. And that's what everybody wants to see. They want to see the vanity statistics. They want to see the big plays. They want to see the first round pick look like a menace out there. And Harmon, solid game for what he played. He ends up with one solo tackle, 2 assisted. He also had the sack, which is quarterback hit, tackle for loss, all registering on the stat sheet for when he played. But that bull rush was it was very impressive. Let's admit it. And if you're paying close enough of attention to that, he was in on a lot of plays, played about 35% of the game in this one. So Derek Harmon is one of my winners in this game. There's some guys that look better than others at times. One of my other winners was Iku Leota. He got some significant playing time that's going to make you think about maybe some of the outside linebacker depth. It's at least going to give him some consideration as maybe a practice squad player if he's able to stick around, because there's not a lot of spots in this team. But he had 4 combined tackles, 2 of those for a loss and a hit on a quarterback. That's saying something, right? He was doing a little more than Jack Sawyer. I'm not going to call Jack Sawyer a loser in this game. It's just a rookie. So Jack Sawyer was somebody that we were absolutely looking for more out of. And then another winner, Brandon Eccles, who, if you were watching the KDKA CBS Pittsburgh feed, Channel 2, which I know a lot of you probably did. You probably didn't get the Tampa Bay Bucs end of this like sometimes you do. It's a different 26. It's not Rod Woodson. It's not Le'Veon Bell. Brandon Eccles, though, is not Brandon Nichols. Bob Pompiani was confusing him or getting him mixed up with Lou Nichols, the running back, who had a nice game, but not enough, I think, on this deep depth chart to stand out. But Eccles, on the other hand, on a deep depth chart with no Corey Trice, he's out there. He's playing. He's been playing some slot. You don't need him with Jalen Ramsey playing slot, but he's playing on the outside and showing that he is versatile and they can move him around. He may become the top backup corner on this team. Another guy that I had high hopes for in coming off of this injury preseason. They talked about him a lot on the broadcast, and that's Cole Holcomb. And Holcomb is a guy that's flying around the field. And with Peyton Wilson getting beat by, was it Bucky Irving? I think it was Bucky Irving who caught the one touchdown pass. Didn't get his head around. Great coverage. Just got to get your head around. And that's, it's a second-year player. But you got Cole Holcomb, who basically didn't play at all last year, coming back from a major injury. And, man, he's flying around. He's a hawk to the ball. I think his stock is definitely pointed upward if you're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and some of the guys that are going to earn a position on this 53-man roster. He could have very easily just folded like a chair, never to be heard from again. And I'm really glad. I'm really happy for him because he took a pay cut in order to prove a point. He may actually carve out some playing time. Wilson, it's a nice luxury to have. You can never have too many inside linebackers, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with that. But hats off to Cole Holcomb. It was great seeing him out there again. This is a Cinderella story. This is a comeback player type of story, if there ever was one. One more major winner, and I'm trying to see if I can find a graphic or an image for him, but I don't think I'm going to. And it's Chuck Clark. A veteran player that was brought in as training camp already started. I think Chuck Clark, just by his playing time, and just his savvy over some players like Sebastian Castro, for example. Castro plays 29 snaps in this game, but none of this is really standing out even against some of the JV type players. He might be more practice squad, where we were originally thinking his camp broke. Who are some of the guys that are at the bottom half that could really surprise us, be some type of camp phenoms, be some sleeper picks? And Castro just hasn't worked out that way. They bring in Clark, and Clark is he's played very well. And it's another guy that's coming off of, he had a serious injury that set back his career. He's also lining up in the slot too. He's lining up like as a dime backer, so they got a lot of versatility, and I think that is going to it's going to bode well for Clark in making this final roster and also contributing for the Steelers this season. Now, of course, unfortunately, special teams winners. It's got to go along with the special team loser. Unfortunately, the special team loser, Christian Kuntz, and he's only losing here, folks, because he got hurt. And I feel for him because I don't know the severity of the injury, and it's not like teams carry multiple long snappers. It's a guy that it's very often an undrafted type player. When you're talking about long snappers, there's only usually 32 of them around. The guy that was formerly of the Patriots, I forget his name now. Is it Arrington? He could maybe be back if he hasn't joined another roster yet, depending on the severity of Kuntz, and short week too, right? But Logan Lee is the winner here because Logan Lee, for me, has been a virtual, where's this guy been? He's another guy that missed a lot of time last year, like Roman Wilson. You hadn't seen him. You usually don't know who the emergency long snapper is. I think at one time, Heath Miller might have been an emergency long snapper. I know James Harrison was, and he actually, I think, did this in a game one time. But Logan Lee comes out there, and it was pretty much undetectable. Great job for Danny Smith, special teams coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and getting some of these guys prepped in emergency type break glass situations. Just phenomenal, right? Just phenomenal. So let's jump over to some of the offensive losers. Unfortunately, jumping around on the roster, you had some of the darlings from the previous week, like Max Hurlman, for example. And Max Hurlman, he did have I think he fell on the ball for the one fumble recovery, but he was targeted multiple times in this game, was left pretty much off of the stat sheet entirely. 3 targets, didn't catch any of them. Not going to say all the passes were great or anything, but there's a very thin margin as to where I thought he's a receiver, he's a running back, maybe he's another H-back type. And it kind of leads me to maybe I really want to put Connor Hayward on a hot seat, but he's not a loser from this game necessarily. Logan Woodside, He comes out, all the quarterbacks threw an interception, but Logan Woodside, you have an opportunity to, quote, win this game, and Logan Woodside gave it up. He only completed 44.4% of his passes, 4 of 9 for 45 yards, 5 yards per attempt, took a sack as well. He had a 20.4 rating. I don't think anybody even thinks that Skylar Thompson's going to necessarily earn the roster spot unless the injury to Will Howard is something a little more lingering, and the Steelers are like, Skylar Thompson still was 10 of 15 in this game, 113 yards. He had the 1 interception, no touchdown. Didn't quite light it up like the previous week, but still showed that he may be capable of at least holding a clipboard in the National Football League, even if it isn't for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Logan Woodside didn't put anything on tape that was necessarily positive that would give anybody like real pause to think, okay, here's a guy that maybe we overlooked. Maybe this is somebody that we could, another team might be sniffing around deep on their bench and need somebody for quarterback depth. I don't know, man. The clock might be ticking. I know he was a former Arthur Smith guy, so a lot of this terminology and stuff from the offense carries over when you need somebody in a pinch for the preseason. That's about where Logan Woodside falls. Trey Sermon, another name here, and I know Trey Sermon runs in for the touchdown, but 3 attempts, 4 yards, 1.3 per attempt. He was targeted twice. He caught 1 ball for 4 yards. Not the kind of standout performance I really need from Trey Sermon to stand out from a Kenneth Gainwell, to stand out from Lou Nichols, who was running fierce, who was running hard. So you get the vanity touchdown. I think Sermon is another bubble player, but I don't necessarily know that his stock increased. And when it doesn't increase, you're not a big winner from this game, and you got to go into maybe the loser category, unfortunately. Hate to say that, but when you have Caleb Johnson, you have Jalen Warren already, there's 2 running back spots. The Steelers sometimes have only kept 2 running backs in previous seasons when trimming for their 53-man roster. So Sermon is another guy that falls there. And anyone else who was snapping the football, not named like Logan Lee for a long snapper, or even Zach Frazier had one that was pretty low, and Mason Rudolph recovered it and then threw the interception. The timing was off, but the Steelers just don't have. I know McCollum is penciled in as like a backup center, and McCollum didn't play. So everybody else that they've had out there, they're just playing different offensive linemen and throwing it. I just hope you don't end up in, like, knock on wood, like that Marquise Pouncey situation where they had to bring in, was it for Fernando Velasquez, if I got that right, former Tennessee Titan that came in. He wasn't even on the team, and all of a sudden, comes in. Pouncey got hurt. That was against the Green Bay Packers. Thankfully, none of these games are afternoon games anymore. The Steelers play these home games. They say, well, it's too hot, let's play 7 o'clock. That might be the last time they played an afternoon preseason game. Somebody could drop in the comments and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I remember it. And that was also the game Jordy Nelson got hurt for the Green Bay Packers back then. I know eons ago, but geez, starting centers are hard enough to find too, let alone not having any depth whatsoever maybe on the roster with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So in putting that out there, I am a little worried about some of the depth with the offensive line, and particularly at the center position. Just, you got to knock on wood, somebody like Zach Frazier is good for the long haul. The defensive losers now I'm going to jump into, and I hate to say it, but getting Nick Herbig out there as one of the guys who didn't end up playing in the previous week might not have been the best decision. It may end up making him a loser and costing him some time in the regular season. I really feel maybe he shouldn't have been out there now that you risk it. And you could say that about anybody, but Herbig, I think, is a pretty big piece of the rotation for the Pittsburgh Steelers when you don't have Alex Highsmith, who, they babied him. He wasn't out there. TJ Watt, they're going to continue babying him because, when you're getting paid that much money, you're getting paid more than some quarterbacks around the league. But Herbig, to come out there, you want to give him some real-time reps, let him chase Teddy Bridgewater around. That didn't work out. I mentioned Dante Kent earlier. We don't know, really, Kelvin Austin being hurt too. Who's taking the kick and punt return duties? And if Austin were to ascend to be a wide receiver too, Mike Tomlin's not a big fan of, sorry, wrong graphic there. Don't have one for Dante Kent. He hasn't been playing. But Dante Kent, like, he's got to get on the field. He's losing time. He's a bottom of the draft pick or selection. You got to get on the field. I don't know how many other ways I could definitely say that. I was looking here. I was trying to find like Mark Robinson and DeMarvin Leal. And these are guys that have been developing on the bottom parts of the roster. And Leal's been playing outside linebacker. He's been playing defensive end. And I don't know that he's necessarily had a fit at either. And when you're playing as JV now, and you've had varsity time, as Mike Tomlin would say, I think the clock's ticking. He could even be traded. Maybe somebody will sniff around and they can get like a 6th round pick or something. Because I don't know that he's around on this roster. Iku Leota, he ends up making a case for being somebody that's on the lower edge of the lower part of the depth for the edge rushers, particularly if Highsmith isn't hurt and if Herbig now isn't too serious for like a week 1. You got those guys healthy. You got Watt, you got Highsmith and Herbig, and you don't really know that Leal's an edge rusher. And you've got Jack Sawyer, who's a rookie. That's 4 of them. Sometimes they don't even keep 5, all depending. And if they feel like there's a 5th, Leota might have passed them up there. So it bounces you back around to the defensive line, and you see what Derek Harmon's doing. You see what Y.A. Black's been doing. Keanu Benton looked good next to Harmon. They looked like a future group. You got Cam Hayward, as long as he doesn't hold out. There's not a lot of spaces left for Leal, even with special teams for that matter. So I'm really worried about his future. And he's going to be competing with like Isaiah Loudermilk. They brought Loudermilk back, but Loudermilk's never really, popped off the page either, but he might be a more consistent player than Leal. So a little worried there. And Mark Robinson, of course, the same kind of deal when you've got, Cole Holcomb flying around. You've got Carson Bruner flying around and playing a significant amount of reps later in the game, playing special teams. He may pass or leapfrog Mark Robinson as well. And the final guy that I feel slipping. I feel him slipping because Brandon Echols plays a little more. I feel him slipping because of the Jalen Ramsey addition. I feel him slipping because Cam Sutton took his role midway through last season once he was off the suspension list. Not sure I got a picture for Beanie Bishop because I'm not sure he was in anything that was picture worthy on the TV frame Saturday evening. I'm struggling to see where Beanie Bishop, he had 1 tackle. Oh, he did have a pass defense. I like Beanie Bishop. I didn't, and this is, don't get me wrong. I think Matt Williamson and some of the other guys on the Steelers post game might have been Mike Pursuta, might have been who else was with him? I'm trying to think who was doing the show last night post game, and they said it the way I was thinking about it, that Beanie Bishop hasn't done anything wrong necessarily. He's just kind of there, and he's getting passed by so many other people. And when you played 19 snaps, 29% of the game, you've got some guys that are making some splash too. Like I said, Daryl Porter. They're trying to work him out. He came out from nowhere and may have a practice squad spot. Bishop might be relegated to that. I don't know where Trice ends up at. There's not a whole lot of spots. I think me and Brian were talking about that. Maybe 1 or 2 of these 3 between Bishop, Trice, and then James Pierre might be all the more room there is on the roster. You've got Joey Porter. You got Jalen Ramsey. You got Darius Slay. And then I think you got Echols. There's 4 corners. Do they keep 5? Do they keep 6? Is Chuck Clark factored into the safeties or just DB room overall behind, the starters who are going to be Juan Thornhill and Deshaun Elliott? There's 3. You got Clark. There's 4. Not a lot of room left on this roster. And that's what we're going to talk about next in closing here. Our next episode, folks. Stay tuned. Middle of the week, Pittsburgh Steelers have a Thursday game this week at Carolina. I don't know that we're going to see any of the big names again. Maybe they just throw them out there real quick, give them like a little taste. I don't know. Maybe Mike Tomlin just leaves everybody guessing. Maybe they got enough out of this joint practice to say we don't need to put these guys out there. I worry about a slow start, but the rest of the league, they're pampering some of the stars, and they've got to do this same stuff. You put somebody out there and it doesn't pay off, or you get somebody hurt. It's a great risk that anybody could get hurt at any moment. I understand that. But when the games don't count for anything, 17-14 does not matter. It's just, why would we put them out there? So I'm going to leave it at that. We'll be back later this week. Check us out for the Steelers and Panthers pregame preview. We're going to look at the 53-man roster and make some recommendations, make our predictions, and also we're going to talk about who's on the hot seat headed into that game, who has to have a big performance. You heard about some of those names already. You heard about some of the winners, some of the losers. Let's see where the momentum carries some of these players further into that third preseason game. But until then, folks, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Joe Kuzma. And as we always close out this show, I encourage everyone out there to be safe. Oh, be good. And we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.